Yeah, so today we're going to talk about review strategy, um, how to build the best review strategy for your company, um, how to choose different review sites, considerations, budgets, what to do with the reviews once you have them. Okay, you already brought them there. What next? So a lot of very interesting topics that Victoria and Erwin worked on. I think they have a really interesting um, deck for us. Just before we start, a few housekeeping notes and some general kind of info about CrowdVocate. So hi, I'm Gal from CrowdVocate. I'm the CEO and co-founder. We run these webinars every month. We kind of do talking customer marketing webinars. Um, Generally, just regarding this session, you can push your questions and answers in the Q&A at any time, and we'll have specific stops to run through them. Regarding CrowdVocate in general, we kind of look at the customer life cycle. We think that customer marketing should be everything post-sale, touching the customer's journey. Today, we're going to touch reviews, which kind of falls under advocacy in some cases under demand generation. Earlier on last month, we touched references, and next month we're going to touch planning and budgeting 2021. But that's kind of CrowdVocate looks at the entire life cycle of customer marketing, and we're trying to touch every topic every month. There's a few industry trends that just wanted to share with you. First of all, we see in COVID, there was a bit of a shift towards upsell, ROI tracking, retention marketing. So customer marketers, advocacy marketers were also asked to influence existing customers, upsell, expansion, retention, track ROI on their activities. We can understand why. Maybe companies want to be more focused on revenue and revenue from existing customers during COVID. We've also seen a bit of focus on journey-based marketing, and we see high growth. So just so you know, very high level, B2B companies have spent in the past $15 billion on events, trade shows. Part of that $15 billion, of course, in COVID is moving to customer marketing post-sale. So we see there's also other budgets that are moving, but we see definitely a lot of recruitment, more than 2,000 positions. Every week we hear about new ones. Look them up on LinkedIn. We also have industry job or CrowdVocate. So I mean, definitely see the market growing for customer marketers and advocacy managers, etc. Just to share that. And we're always happy to do stuff around the category and the community. So there's a Slack community. If you want to join, you can ping us and we'll basically add you to the community. I think it's now 500 people strong. So it's a great channel to talk in. We have other stuff like the expert zone. If you have content that you want to share or you want to talk about, let us know and we'll be happy to share that in another webinar or in a blog. So definitely happy to do every kind of activity that helps the customer marketing and advocacy community get the word out and grow. What's coming up next? So we're going to have a webinar first week of December about planning 2021 and building customer marketing budgets and how do you make it as something that is strategic for getting executive buy-in. So that's the next webinar, and then we're going to have a webinar about customer experience and building advocacy from the ground up. Those are the ones coming up. Lastly, our topic today is reviews. So quick stats. I know that Erwin and Victoria are going to share that as well, but I mean, we all know, and if you came to this webinar, that reviews are important. Different stats. I actually got these ones today from my friends at Central Station, so thank you for that. But basically, you can see that reviews, voice of customer has become very important. We all know that. I love this one actually from Serious Decisions. Where 5 years ago, product was most important, right? The promise of offering was way higher than the influence of customer references and testimonials. And I put reviews kind of under references, testimonials, and voice. But today it's flipped. Basically, voice of customer, whether it's reviews, testimonials, references, that influences the deal much more because a lot of the products are kind of on par, equal, and then you want to hear what customers say about them. So that's why reviews are so important, and that's what we're going to talk about. In a nutshell, CrowdVocate, of course, also support reviews. I'm not going to go into that. but we help companies understand which automatically trigger reviews to customers. Some companies do it based on NPS. That's lovely. We can do that as well. But there are so many other triggers that you should think about when you want to track reviews. For example, if somebody finished training, if somebody just upsell, somebody renewed. So there's a lot of triggers for a review, and you have a lot of users. Many times companies only reach out to certain contexts, and you don't want the VP to or the decision maker to spend time on writing a review. But there are so many other users of your products that can go write reviews on different times and triggers. We'd love to help and share how that can be done best, and also how that can be tracked in CRM or starting from CRM and even tracking the value of reviews, the ROI. So that's kind of, if anybody wants to learn a bit more how CrowdWidget supports that. And with that, I mean, let's talk about the topic that we're going to have today. So while Erwin and Victoria introduce themselves and also introduce what they're going to talk about, we're going to also have a quick poll, and we'll have winners that can choose an audible book. So you should fill out the form if you haven't done so before. Last thing, Noah would also put in the chat a course that Talina is doing for people who want to build their, basically build their kind of, name inside the customer marketing domain and want to kind of know how to position themselves in this new and upcoming category. So we're also promoting that. If you want to have, there's a special discount that we have. So anybody that's doing activities in this domain and wants us to promote them, we're happy to do that. As long as we can share and everybody can help out with that. I'm going to stop sharing and hand over the mic and the presentation to Victoria and Arwen.
Thank you, Gal. Appreciate that. Hi, everybody. My name is Victoria LaPlante. I am the newly appointed Director of Customer Marketing at Numerated. For those of you who aren't familiar with Numerated, it is a fintech startup here in Boston that helps digitize a lot of the traditional banking operations, which is certainly now ever more so important that we are doing a lot of our work, in the digital era nowadays, sorry. But I recently joined this company and I have a lot of experience in both customer marketing and advocacy at a lot of different Boston B2B tech companies, from Mendix to Nasuni and most notably HubSpot. And I'm really looking forward to sharing some of my tips and tricks as well as experiences with the audience today.
And this is Erwin Hipsman, and Victoria will start with the agenda, but I'm with NextThink, which is a Swiss-based company that services the IT providers. So one quick story, when COVID hit, your typical IT manager would manage 1,000 employees out of 10 offices, and now that same IT manager needs to manage 1,000 people out of 1,000 offices. And so the sort of the elevator pitch is that we help IT be proactive. So in most situations, IT is reactive and they just wait for the tickets to open. But what if IT was able to solve the end user's problem without them having to reach out or even without them even knowing about it? So that's what we mean by moving from proactive to reactive. Very similar career to Victoria, based in Boston, and I've worked for 3 or 4 companies as well, starting up their customer marketing. So with that, Victoria, it's all yours.
Absolutely. Thank you, Erwin. And maybe we should share how we know each other.
How's that?
Yeah, so Erwin was one of my first advocates when I launched the program at HubSpot. And I feel like ever since then, I've become a huge advocate of his. So I'm really looking forward to our conversation today and learning a lot, just through these conversations in preparation, Erwin. So
I'm starting to turn red there a little bit.
Oh, I'm the one in pink. So today we're going to go through the following sections. We're going to review the value of reviews today, which Gal touched upon earlier, so we won't spend too much time there. Erwin and I will talk about vendor and site selection, how to think about a strategic approach to which sites you want to target for your review campaigns. Once you have those selected, how to get started, how to roll out a review campaign kind of initially and then ongoing. So what are some tactics that you can follow to kind of build out an engine for driving product reviews across the organization? And then where and how to leverage those reviews. So once you get a review, your process is not done. It's really only just starting. So we're going to show you some best practices on where and how to leverage those reviews. So again, not going to spend too much time here. I think everybody on the line is a big advocate in terms of the value of driving product reviews for their organization. But in the year of 2020, as we all know, budgets are freezing and new logo sales and new logo revenue is stagnating, if not, declining in a lot of our organizations. And so, as Gal mentioned, a lot of our focus has shifted more towards that customer marketing and driving that customer evidence, because it's ever more so crucial as customers and prospects are doing their due diligence before they're making these big purchasing decisions. And then the last note here is experience differentiation over product differentiation. We've all seen the MarTech, is it 5,000 now? I don't know, but the proliferation of technology. I believe that software companies can no longer stand out on their own just due to the platform offerings that they have. More and more customers are looking to the experience and the experiences that they are seeing through their peers, and making decisions on what types of companies that they want to partner and work with. So those are kind of the top 3 things that we think of in terms of value of reviews today.
Right, thanks, Victoria.
Yeah.
So what I have found is that in the customer marketing world, there are some programs that sort of bubble up from the bottom, and the customer marketing person brings it on board and puts it in a sandbox and slowly releases it and tries to build internal buy-in from the whole organization. Peer reviews is the opposite. It really is a top-down approach, because there's obviously dollars involved, there's PR involved, there's customers saying things about you, positive and negative. So you just can't sort of brainstorm it, launch it softly, and then see where it goes. This has got to be something that the organization's bought in. And at NextThink at the beginning of this year, we had one of our key initiatives being around generating customer reviews. So that came from the top down, which is typical. I think it would be very hard to do a bottom-up approach for peer reviews. So when we did our analysis, we looked at, I'll just get rid of this. Perfect. We looked at 5 vendors. I'm sure there are others, and I'll ask Victoria and Gal for any others that they may know about. And each company has to decide which makes the most sense. So, G2 is #1 in space, so they get the most people who come to their site, probably have the most categories. A little bit more on the mid-market as opposed to enterprise. We sell into enterprises, so that became sort of less viable for us. Trust Radius, I like them a lot. I like the one thing they do is they allow you, the company, to create some custom questions. So it's not all cookie cutter questions, because there might be some specific things you want to peel out from the reviews, and those can change over time, depending on what it is you want to learn or what you want people to talk about. So that customizable question is very positive. Gartner is what we chose because, first of all, it's Gartner. So it's got high brand recognition in our world, because we sell to IT and Gartner basically services to IT. It's free, which is an interesting business model, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. What I like about Gartner is that you can use their quotes. So anybody who, any customer who leaves a review, those quotes can be used in various marketing techniques, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. And another company that we're actually, as we start moving into adding some IT Central Station, is a very different business model in that, all of these have, except for Gartner, have free, so anybody can go in there and write a review. The problem is you can't do much with the free version. IT Central Station sort of flips it on the side, and basically they're doing outsourced reviews. So a customer agrees to do a 15-minute call, they record it, transcribe it, that becomes the review, and it becomes a piece of content that in a sense you've already licensed from them. So you get a PDF that's not quite a use case, but it's basically their review in a nice format that as part of the package, you get the license. Capterra is another one that's part of the Gartner family. It's more SMB, it's free, and it just, depending on what it is you're selling and where you see your competitors, it might be a viable place to start. Certainly start with a free version, so you really cut your teeth and learn how to do this is not a bad idea, and that's also what we chose. The cons are, for each of them, I talked about G2, is, not for us, wasn't really an enterprise. They're not really in IT. They get lots of reviews. The content's easy. It's easy for people to write their review. And you do have to license to be able to use their reviews. So it doesn't really give you much for the free version, but it's there. Trust rate is a little less expensive. They're a little bit more upfront about what an enterprise is. To me, an enterprise is 10,000 people, or above. Most of the review sites, are a little less generous, what they call an enterprise. So when you see the numbers, it's like, oh, a third of their people looking at enterprises, but they're very generous in what they define as an enterprise. Gartner is very bureaucratic. You've got to read the small print. Even though because it's free, you have no leverage over them. In a situation where you're paying, you probably have a little bit more leverage over the vendors. And they tend to be a little on the bureaucratic side. Once you really get into them, it's try doing things with them. IT Central Station, they charge per review. So and there are different packages, whatever. So for that process of somebody interviewing the customer, transcribing it, creating the content. So that's the way their core is just a different model. Again, you do have to license to use any of the verbiage in the reviews. And then I talk about Capterra, which is being very basic, and it's part of Gartner. It can be a little confusing, so we decided not to go in that direction. Gal or Victoria, do you know of any others? Because there are new ones all the time. This is about 9 months old, our analysis.
No, Erwin, these seem to be the main ones that I've personally worked with over my years in customer marketing. One thing I will say in terms of how we went about selection, there are kind of 3 different ways that I've gone about it in the past. The simplest one is, we just took the Alexa ranking and figured out which ones had the most traffic overall. And I think at the time it was G2, and it might even still be G2 Crowd gets the most traffic. Secondary to that is just, having a conversation with your sales leadership or sales organization. What are they hearing in terms of where prospects are talking about doing research? And then lastly, and this would be more of a heavier lift, is sending out some sort of post-sale survey to new customers, asking them about resources that they have looked at in terms of the buying process, and seeing if any of these websites come out in the survey results.
Go.
Yeah, I would add, so first of all, I see people writing in the comments about SourceForge and software advice, definitely additional review sites. We've seen companies go to Trustpilot, which some people put under consumer or B2C, but the nice thing about Trustpilot, for example, is that they have, you could actually use their ranking in the website in a much more, I think, in a better way, and they give you some sentiment analysis, like if customers are saying good stuff or bad stuff about you. So that's the pros, and also their pricing is relatively, to the other platform, relatively cheap. So but there are about, we even worked, for example, not giving out the name of the company, but in a medical space, they have total different review sites. So I think part of what companies need to do is understand the review sites that cater best for their industry, right? IT Central Station, I think, are very strong, for example, with cybersecurity, or, IT in general, stuff like that. I know that G2 has a lot of industries, and also there, might be also both for SMB and, non-SMB. So, I definitely think the companies should do a bit of research, not only on the pros and cons in sense of features and pricing, those are very important, but I think actually the most important is which one is most visited by or revered as source by your customers, your industry, and start there. I would also say, and you're probably also going to allude into that, but I always recommend having more than one, right? Because, and I know it's hard, it's a heavy lift, and Erwin's probably going to talk about why they chose just one and all that, but I'm just saying the diversification of having at least 2 sites gives you also different perspective, different stuff that you can share, different logos you can put on your website and whatnot.
Yeah, I would definitely, my sense is that if you can start with a free version, start with that, so you cut your teeth and really learn how to do it. And even if you're going to go to pay, I would still just start with one, sort of master that, make the mistakes, particularly around internal enablement, and then look at another one, probably 6 months later. One thing a lot of these vendors are starting to have is buyer intent. So I haven't, we use a different platform for buyer intent, so it was less interesting for us to go into the buyer intent. They tend to be on the pricey side, but you really get, they're crunching all their data as to, where the, the users who are also going to you, what else are they, what else are they looking at? So that's something, if you're marketing people, might be a nice way to get into buyer intent without getting sort of a separate platform. So if you're making the investment in, one of these sites, I would wait a few months till you really see that you've got enough reviews and all that. But adding on maybe 6 months or 9 months later, their buyer intent package might not be a bad idea to start getting into that game.
Definitely.
And with that,
And
Carl, any
just one
questions?
one more thing to mention. I think that one of the things that companies should look at is what is the threshold to be on their reports. So for Gartner, for example, if you want to go into their whatever magic quadrant or whatnot, or for others, if you want them to put you in their G2 has this like report where they put in vendors. I think that if you have like, for example, 5 reviews, they're not going to put you on that report. There's a threshold. In Capterra, I know that the threshold is 10. I'm not going to mention the threshold, which is very doable. I'm not going to mention the threshold in every review site. I'm just going to say when you choose one, make sure that you can meet the threshold, because if you're not going to be on their kind of quadrant or whatever you want to call it report, you're missing out on a marketing piece, a marketing element.
Yeah, and I would say I think for most websites, it's 10 is the minimum from what I've seen, but there's also a recency bias, and so you want to make sure that you're getting 10 new reviews within that time frame, and I believe most of them is a calendar year.
And that's where reading the small print and understanding their methodology and their algorithm, if you're going to invest to get the maximum out of it, understand the rules of the game and how it works. It's not that you're gaming the system, but you're understanding the system and can leverage it as best you can. And we'll show some examples of that a little bit later. Gal, any other questions from the audience?
We had a question actually of how do you get customers to do the reviews, but I think we're going to touch about that. So beyond emails, what can you do? We'll talk a bit later on.
Yeah, so basically the vendors all say, let us do it for you. And I am not, and I think Victoria agrees with me, we are not big fans of that methodology. My sense is if the company itself, with all the customer facing people in the organization, and we'll talk about traffic between them in a second, if the company can't on its own generate those reviews, then you probably yeah, you can outsource, but how good are the reviews going to be? How authentic are they going to be? And if people don't have the time, then maybe it's not the right time to launch a program like that. If internally you can't source the reviews yourself. There might be a time and a place where you want to outsource to the company, where you basically give them your names and they reach out to the people and they pay them $25 to do the review. But it's just doesn't feel right. Victoria, any comments on that?
Yeah, no, couldn't agree with you more. I think ultimately you should own your customers and contact lists, and I don't think it's really a good practice to be giving that information away to other vendors. And also, when a customer is receiving an email, it's always better to have it come from an organization or ideally even a person that they know within that organization, because you are asking them for a favor. You're asking them for 15, 20, 30 minutes of their time. And as we know, time is very valuable. So, you want to set yourself up for success by making that ask come from the appropriate person.
And internal enablement is really critical because that appropriate person is generally an account manager or a CSM or a solution consultant or whoever. It could even be an executive making an ask. Mm-hmm. And it's when we rolled it out, we had meetings. Probably half the salespeople I met with one-on-one, and the other half I was able to get in group settings to really explain it. In EMEA, this is a little less popular and a little less known. In Meta, even less so. So there are situations where I literally had to explain what a peer review was, like, it's Yelp or TripAdvisor, because people didn't even know what it was in some cases. So don't assume everyone knows what it is. In the US, it's probably a little bit stronger. And then the coordination, who's going to ask? Because for a particular customer, you could have 3 or 4 people making the ask, and and who are they going to ask? So you ask them to coordinate, who's going to make that ask, because what's even worse is having 3 people do the ask, especially if you've got incentives on the table. Mm-hmm. So that's something that can, particularly as you're rolling it out, is not a bad idea to do incentives to the sales or CSM to generate reviews. And this is what I mean by gaming the system. But I don't mean in a negative way. And generally, people are going to ask for those folks who will give a positive review. They're not going to ask people to give a negative review. There's plenty of opportunity for people to give negative reviews on their own. Anybody can log in who is a customer, and these sites will vet people that go into LinkedIn and make sure they're truly a customer. There's plenty of opportunity for people to leave, negative reviews. But if you're going to ask, you're more likely to ask the people who will give positive reviews.
Yep, and to that, I'll add, if you're working with any strategic or larger accounts, you'll want to make sure that you have your executive sponsor ideally be the one to reach out to your buyer to leave those reviews, and have it not just be, coming from a random customer marketer. It really needs to come from the person who has that, again, that stronger relationship. And then timing, I think we didn't necessarily touch upon the timing. There's seasonality to all of our relationships, right? There's busy seasons and there's lulls, and you hopefully can time the asks from your account management or customer facing teams accordingly to those, maybe quieter seasons that aren't butting up against renewal period. And always, if there's any sort of product situation that you're not making the ask at the wrong time, even if it is a good customer, if they're going through any sort of product issues, that's just not a good time to be making those asks.
And then here's the math, the waterfall math is that not every review gets approved. And you'll see that sometimes they don't, a lot of the vendors won't accept from partners, or if the content is just not strong enough, people just didn't say much, or they can't prove that the person actually worked at the company. So it's probably about 2/3 will get approved, 1/3 won't. So if you've got a number, like you want to generate 50 reviews in the next 3 months, you're probably going to need to have 75 people actually submit. And that probably means 150 people need to be asked, because not everybody will write a review. So you need to think of that waterfall math.
Yeah, and some of this can be mitigated by training, and giving talk points to your account management team. So if they know that you need to have your customer or unique identification number to leave a review, make sure that they know what that number is, right? And so you can hopefully arm them to leave the best review to get published.
Great.
I would add on that just that you should, all the review sites give you guidance on what is the threshold for them to approve a review. Just an example, they have to have a business email. Okay, that's kind of basic. So definitely, I think that customer marketing should prepare that email and have that, whether it's customer success or sales, doing the outreach, they need to do the outreach with the customer marketing template email, because again, you don't want to have people, like Erwin showed, 70 people go there, but only 40 people are approved or whatnot. It always happens that some are not approved, but to minimize that, you definitely want to be able to give the guidance. You should give your business email. You should be, write more than 2 words. You should, all that stuff that kind of makes sure that it's at least qualifies, the baseline of the vendors.
Yep. Really good point. So here's an email template. I hope we'll share the deck afterwards if you're interested in reading it in fine print. So when I was at HubSpot, we followed kind of 3 different strategies to making these asks. We followed a one-to-one strategy where we had either the account manager or the executive sponsor reach out to the individual customers. This email is an example of a one-to-few reach out, I would say. So I personally, as the reference manager, would follow up to customers at specific points in time. When this is an example of when they had completed a certification or a training, I was able to reach out to those people who had scored that training positively. And then, the one-to-many type of strategy, something that we'll touch upon a little bit later when Erwin goes through our ongoing campaign ideas.
With that, Victoria, keep on talking about events. How do you
Okay.
deal with this brave new world of events that Kyle talked about earlier?
Yeah, so events, wow, we are all going through this rapid change of having all of our events now become virtual. So I think it's going to be a little more challenging, but it's definitely still doable. I'll talk about in my previous experiences doing in-person events were always such a great opportunity and success to drive product reviews. So either you have a booth at your event or maybe a dinner that you're following up on, always asking customers when you're meeting them in person to leave a review and explain to them how valuable it is to your organization and much appreciated. I don't think much changes if it becomes a digital event, because you still have follow-up communications that you're going to be sending to your customers after that event closes. And that's, again, another touch point and opportunity for you to go ahead and make that ask if it's appropriate.
And then there's a concept, from the algorithm and the methodology, all the review sites want to see reviews constantly throughout the year, to have 20 reviews in Q1 and nothing till Q1 next year, definitely lowers your score. And so some of those things are, and basically I've worked out with the other customer facing people that once a quarter, at the end of each quarter, they're going to write me a report that will say, who are the most engaged from a support perspective. I mean, support, if you think about it, they touch the customer more than anybody. Who actually sends them a note afterwards and says, hey, thanks so much, really appreciate it. Clearly NPS, we've talked about that. Renewal is not necessarily always the best time to ask for the review. It's a good time to think about it, but if it was a contentious renewal or just it's not the right time right after the renewal. So just don't assume that it's always the best time. I just saw a post by Amy Bills from Forrester Serious Decisions talking about that post-renewal activity. And then people have gotten certifications or maybe finished their 5th course or whatever it is. A lot of it depends upon the data that you have access to, but these folks across the organization should be able to come up with 50, 100, 200 names for you to reach out to. And that what we do is I run that list by the account team and say, anybody you want to reach out to directly, anybody you want to take off the list, everyone else I'm going to reach out on that one to few type of operation, because the account managers are not going to reach out to 50 people at a time. So they'll cherry pick the 4 or 5 they want to communicate with anyway, and then they'll leave the rest to customer marketing to communicate with.
And I think, before we move on, so a few things. First of all, actually we have a question, so let's just stop for a Q&A. Elizabeth was asking, would we put Tech Validate as a review category for product reviews? That's an interesting question. What do you think about Tech Validate?
Victoria, you want to handle that? Or?
As far as I know, and maybe it's been a bit, but I thought Tech Validate was indeed a review platform. So maybe I'm not familiar.
Tech Validate. So Tech Validate is not a classic review platform for sure. I think it does allow you to capture some kind of quotes, voice of customer, and whatnot, and maybe in a marketing way turn those into reviews. But it's definitely not a review platform that is common. But companies do, by the way, use Tech Validate as a way to capture voice of customers and then send them to something that looks like a review platform. So I think we could kind of put it in there in a way. There was another question that I think is interesting. So would you basically, I think Erwin mentioned, we want to have those 5-star reviews, but I think we all know that if we see a company having 100% 5-star reviews, something is fishy, right? And we're thinking, okay, did they kind of, bake those reviews and give rewards or prizes or whatnot? So what is your thought about that?
Yeah, certainly. I think you don't want to, stack the deck in any sort of way and try to find opportunities to drive authentic reviews. Ultimately, I mean, at the end of the day, you want to ask customers to leave an unbiased review, whether that they are very satisfied or maybe they're more of a neutral customer. Not asking for a 5-star review. You have to be very specific in the language that you're using when you're making these asks, and find opportunities. Like here at the renewal example, you're asking customers at a specific point in their life cycle. That's not necessarily asking happy customers at a specific point in their life cycle. So you want to make sure that it's a balancing act of asking known happy customers as well as opportunities just for kind of organic, kind of neutral customer asks. That makes sense.
And that's where the always on gets interesting, because clearly if a salesperson's going to ask, they're going to ask somebody that they've got a relationship, they know is happy. Always on opens it up to, just because somebody got a certification, that doesn't necessarily mean they're a happy customer, and we're not vetting them at that point. And we haven't launched that, so I've got the list and we're ready to launch it. So it'll be interesting to see from this effort how many reviews come in that are not the 5-star, not 5-star review. And then from an incentive perspective, even like we focus on Gartner, we basically let people choose a donation as opposed to giving them a $25. I think a $25 gift certificate is just lame, is I guess the best word for it. But to say, hey, we're going to make a donation on your part, I think that's okay. And we have a lot, we work with a lot of European companies who are very strict much more than American companies.
Right.
So yeah, to highly incentivize a customer to write review is probably not a good idea. It will bite you eventually.
And I think I
Absolutely.
would add one more thing. I think that in the general scheme of things, people understand that nobody's going to send people who gave them, three on the NPS ranking to a review site automatically, right? I mean, at the end of the day, I think that most people read in the reviews the depth and not just look at the stars, right? So hopefully, a person who's buying a software would actually want to read what they said in pros and cons, and that's where you actually have the depth, the data, the insights, whether it's 4 stars or 5 stars or even 3 stars. At the end of the day, that's also very subjective. I might rank something, 4 star, where somebody else might rank it 3 or 5, even though we all had exactly the same experience. So
That's a really good point, Gal. And personally, when I would see a lower star, 3, 2, 1 star, 0 star review, it signaled my attention, absolutely. And I flagged that review, and I thought of it more as an opportunity for us as a brand to respond to that person, to A, double check and check for any inaccuracies, and B, follow up and make sure that they're having the right product experience. If they're mentioning something that's wrong or broken with our product, we need to let our product management team know and action upon that, and then prove to the customer that we're listening and we're actioning against that to hopefully earn their trust, and maybe hopefully a review in the future that's of a higher score.
And I think there's, by the way, a debate. I remember from one of our customers a story about sales coming back to customer marketing with a bad review that the competitor is using against them. So they said, look what you did. You sent somebody to the review site. They gave us a bad review, and now the competitors are, I don't know if I can say it, but talking about us not nicely. I think part of that is educating sales as well. I mean, customer success totally understand that, of course, reviews can be good and bad, and that you have to take that insight and do something with it. Sales might expect that everything would be, dandy, and they need to understand that even if you got a bad review, and even if your competitors are using that against you, if you have the right kind of pitch against it, right? To say, A, we can show you bad reviews that they have. B, we understand that some of our customers are not that happy. We're working to improve. C, let's talk about the issues in that specific review, and let me show you why we have actually improved on them. So, I mean, if you prepare all that, actually, that's not such a bad thing to have, because then those prospects actually know that your reviews are for real.
Hey, Victoria, you want?
Sure. So let's move on to tracking reviews. So if you have a customer marketer, who has the bandwidth to start tracking reviews, because I know just getting bandwidth is half of the battle often in our worlds. Tracking reviews can be really as sophisticated or simple as you want. So if you're starting small, or maybe you don't have a lot of customers to start out with, a simple spreadsheet will suffice, right? So an example is the customer, what website they left a review on, what that score was, and a link to that review if you know who they are. If you've perhaps a larger scale program, then it might be worth exploring more sophisticated options to intake customer reviews, and then you can track the reviews to the individual customer's account, either in your instance of HubSpot or whatever you're using for marketing automation, or even link it over to your sales CRM. So you can start to build out a repository of customers who you know have left you reviews on different websites, and then refer back to those in the sales process or as needed. I'm going to pause there. Any questions on tracking reviews, and Erwin, any experience that you have on some strategies there?
Yeah, for example, with Gartner, what happens is it's easy to track which account manager generated the review, but it's really hard to track because their whole thing is anonymous. So we will never know who wrote the review. Nobody who's reading it will ever know who wrote the review. In G2 and some of the other platforms, people have the option of giving their name if they want, although my bet is most stay anonymous. And then at least when you have the name, then you can do some tracking. But I have a similar spreadsheet with all the reviews and where they're coming from and who generated them as well. So it's a little bit of a manual process. There's privacy reasons why the review sites just don't want us to know every person who writes a review, or have not giving that person the option to be anonymous, which is one of the reasons why review sites are not always the best generators of advocacy, because you can get 100 reviews and maybe even across 3 or 4 platforms and maybe identify 10 people who wrote the reviews. I did, after some of the reviews, go to the salesperson and say, hey, who wrote the review? And they go, well, it could be this one, it could be this one, it could be this one. Like, well, that's not too helpful. So you just got to give it up that you're just not going to know who wrote all the reviews.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would add though, on top of that, that there are ways to track it in when you ask the customers, and of course that's asking their permission. So for example, what we do with some companies is basically say, okay, after we know that the person went to the review site, we can ask them, are you willing to give us back the link of your review? So we could actually review it and send it to our product team, CS team, whatever, so they can learn and improve. And many customers, even though the site allows you to be anonymous, and even though they would choose the option to be anonymous on the site, don't mind actually sending back to the vendor what they wrote about the vendor if they ask. So I think asking customers if you can track the fact that they went to that they clicked the link, they went to the review site. You could also follow on that and ask them, are you willing to share your review with us so we can learn and improve? That's very fair to do, and you can improve your tracking that way.
So to help sales, what I did is in our SharePoint, I curated the top, 7 or 8 reviews, so they don't have to go through every review. So if there's a situation where, a great use case for using reviews is if a prospect is asking for, hey, I'd like to speak to some customers for a reference call. As we all know, that could take, 3, 4, 5, it could take a week to coordinate that. Here, it's like, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Customer, I'm working on it. But in the meantime, here are 2 or 3 reviews that are anonymous reviews from Gartner that you might want to look at. So I basically have curated the top half a dozen of them for people to be able to quickly access. And then these reviews can be used, should be leveraged in a lot of different places. For example, on our customer page, we have these reviews. The one thing you should know is that if you're going to use reviews in a public setting, like on a web page or even a PDF, you've got to get the approval of the vendor, and you've got to build in about a week to get that approval. They want to see exactly how's it going to be portrayed, and we don't want to be the last people that the web team's waiting on us to get the review approved, because at some point they're going to say we're going without it, and the next build of the web page will put reviews in. So build enough time to work with the vendor to get those reviews approved,
Yeah, and I think this is where Gartner has a huge leg up, is that because the reviews are left anonymously, you do have the ability to use the reviews as testimonials on your website without needing to get pre-authorization or approval either from Gartner or from the reviewer themselves. And so we are able to use those both on our website and in any sales pitch decks, etc. But again, they are left as anonymous. So if you need to have stronger proof point, that's where case studies and actual customer testimonials might have the upper hand.
Yeah, and a page like this, what we do is we sprinkle reviews on some key pages, but also there's a page with reviews and case studies and all that. So you're using those reviews at a lot of different places within your web pages. Mm-hmm. And then a lot of the for free, you don't get widgets. So if you're using Gartner, G2 or IT Central, but widgets are great because you can put them a lot of different places. We have this on our community page so that, if they click on it, this will bring people right to where all your reviews are. So it's a good thing for salespeople to have in pitch decks. It's a good thing for follow-up for salesperson. Maybe not send a specific review, but hey, here's all of our reviews. Just click on that link. So that's a very, one of the tools that they'll give you to do that.
Yep.
And then earlier, Gal talked about the, so from our perspective, the next steps for us are, first of all, to expand to other platforms. So we're actively looking at 2 or 3 others and about to sign some contracts, which is great. And then around recognition. So Gartner has their customer choice. G2 has their top 100, which is probably very hard for a new customer to get in there because it's based upon number of reviews and quality of reviews and all that. That'd be a tough one to break into first year. But Gartner does have, G2 does have this grid, and they publish it, twice a year, I think, for the different industries. So, this is where you want to understand what does it take to get into that upper right-hand corner, the number of reviews, and the methodologies are there. You just have to read them and pay attention to them, and and work with the company. This is where you have some leverage in that they'll explain to you, how do you position yourself properly? How much activity do I need? When does it start? When does it stop? In order to get as good of a place in that grid, and then it becomes another marketing tool along with the reviews. Victoria, anything else you want to add, or?
Yeah, I think, to take it home, you can start as big or as small as you want. As Erwin and I recommend, start with 1, maybe 2 sites just to get familiar with, their process and the nuance of how to leave and drive reviews to their websites, and then iterate and grow from there. If you have the opportunity to partner with your sales and maybe even your PR team just to get a pulse from the street and see, which of these sites are more popular in your specific industry for your technology, the best strategy is to go to where your buyers are doing your research.
Yeah, and one other recommendation is to, is to make sure you're at least up to speed on the free version. So, the half a dozen companies with the free version, is the logo correct? Is the description of the company correct? Take as full advantage of those as you can. So at least you're there and have done that. And then, I can't stress enough, because, we got caught a few times not paying enough attention to the rules, the fine print, the deadlines, the methodologies. Because if you don't follow them, it's like, sorry, you have to wait till next year because you were 3 days late for doing X, Y, Z. So really pay attention to those things, because there's a reason why they have them, and I understand why this is the rules, and you just got to play by them. And you do that, you'll be much more successful. So Gal, let's see if there are any questions.
Yeah, so let's go through a few questions. First of all, thank you for that, Erwin and Victoria. I think that was great. I think it was very insightful. I would add to that definitely you have to combine, go deep on one, whether it's G2, Gartner, IT Central Station, whatever you choose, Trust Radius, and do the process there the whole way, so you could be on the grid and all that stuff. But try also to go broad on a few others, so you have kind of the combination of both. Okay, so let's hit on a few questions, and I recommend to everybody, let's see what we have in the chat and the Q&A, and we'll start doing questions and answers. So we have a question from Kira. What is your strategy on following up, deflecting negative reviews, SLA, etc.? Do you have any kind of specific, agreement, whether internally or with your customers, that if there's negative reviews, you follow up and you talk about them? I'll share what we know from one of the companies, but happy to hear what you have on that.
Happy to share some experience there, Kira. Thank you for the question. So when I was first starting out as a reference and review manager, I personally was reading every single review and following up and thanking the customer for taking the time to leave their review, because some of the sites you can respond to the reviews publicly. But then obviously, as our program was growing, the number of reviews was just skyrocketing. So I wasn't able to follow up on every single review. But when, as I mentioned, I saw a negative review or a lower scored review, that is one that I would flag, copy and paste it, and send it over to my product team. And it was part of the role and responsibility of the product marketing managers or the product manager, depending on how your company is structured, to actually follow up with that customer individually on the public website to let the customer know that we read their review, we're hearing them, and we're going to respond, fix the issue with the product that they're having. So really making it important to let the customers know we are reading these reviews and we're taking their feedback seriously.
Right. I'd add to that, for example, HubSpot has a team of voice of customer, and that team actually goes and reads reviews every month and then shares that with all teams. They have a voice of customer meeting every month. Their whole management sits on that meeting every month, and they push in, data from other sources, not just review sites, but also from review sites, and they talk about it, and product and customer success. Everybody owns, tasks, and they try to get back to customers as much as possible and actually report on that feedback and what they're doing around that. So definitely think that companies should have a strategy of getting back to customers. Another question we have from JT, any suggestion on getting reviews from end users who may not be your primary contacts for the sales piece? And I think that's a great one.
I think that's where, the salespeople will go, will talk to their primary contacts, because they tend not to talk to end users necessarily. And that's where getting those reports. Now, if you have a cloud-based product and you could, say, okay, who are the 100 people who've logged in the most in the past 30 days? Those are your end users.
Mhm.
And, you can look at the list, maybe you distribute it to the account team, just to filter it a little bit. And maybe you'll get 60 names of true end users who you could, then reach out to. So that, I think there are probably a dozen ways of getting names into your queue to reach out to. That's that sort of one-to-many, because you probably wouldn't have an account manager reach out to, 50 people a month, because it was just would overdo it. But I always give them the chance to cherry pick, because it's an opportunity for them to reach out to the customer. And it's like, hey, I noticed you logged in 50 times last month, and we're 6 months away from renewal. Hey, why don't you write a review? Or I noticed you spoke at this event, whatever it is. But it'll trigger the account manager to make the ask. But my bet is, once you really get good at this, it's probably 80%, 20% are sort of being sourced in that one-to-one way, and 80% in that one-to-few or one-to-many.
Yep. We had a really successful campaign that was based off of support tickets. So once a support ticket got closed out, we had sent them a simple, how satisfied are you with, the level of support that you received today? And then a secondary question after they responded would pop up and ask them if they were indeed satisfied to please go ahead and leave us a review. And so that was a campaign that worked well in terms of getting to the end users.
Right, and I think again, the trick is, again, not to rely only on CSMs or not to rely only on sales. I mean, we of course do that at CrowdVocate, but generally support tickets are great, NPS surveys are great, annual surveys are great. Using journey-based triggers and even doing, for example, in-app messages to different users, putting that in your events. In events, you won't have just key contacts like we mentioned. Even virtual events, you could run a request in the virtual events for reviews. On your newsletters, on your email signatures. So there's many kind of, and of course not everything would work for everybody, but ideally you do want to be able to tap to the wider audience of users who many times don't get to talk to the brand. The contact people actually talk to the brand much more frequently, and they're not so much interested sometimes in doing more activities. But the other types of users using your product actually don't talk to the brand that much, and they would probably be very happy to actually go and write a review, because hey, if there's a gift card, that's great. But even if not, they feel a bit of relationship with the brand that they can contribute. Additional questions we had is about, so we had a question about how would you identify reviews and then push them into the general reference program. So in a way, Martha was asking, how do you leverage the people who you do know that gave reviews and kind of reach out to them and say, okay, now can you write a customer story, join the reference tool, etc.
Yeah, that's the hard part, is to identify that individual and convert them into the next step. I mean, when you look at it from a sort of custom, I think Victoria talked about sort of the value of an active advocacy. A review doesn't take that much time. It's a relatively easy ask, and whereas there's someone doing a video or speaking at a conference, is a much richer ask. I think it's a hard transition to make, because so many of these are anonymous, and even the person might write a review, but to get them to then do something very public is a very big transition, because you've got your internal, their internal issues of being able to be public. They might just be an end user, and the boss is going, wait, say, why are you getting speaking at these engagements? So I'm just not sure that it's an easy transition to make, to get someone who writes even a great review to necessarily to do a use case. So I don't really focus. I don't really give those as leads to our to my colleagues in marketing. That, oh, here's a great person. It might happen once in a while, but it's really hard to do.
Yeah, I would echo that. It's certainly hard to do. If you read a stellar review, you're like, oh my God, this review is knocking it out of the park. Go ahead and chase that. That's a good lead to follow up on and figure out who left that review, or invite them into your advocacy program. One strategy I've done in the past is sit down on a quarterly basis and sort and filter all the reviews by your ideal customer profile. So we look at all of our enterprise clients in the MarTech space that left us 5-star reviews. And we go through those reviews of the account managers, and sometimes just the way that they write, they know that it's a specific customer. And then you can shortlist those customers to invite into your advocacy or your reference program, just because you can figure out kind of through reverse engineering who they were.
Yeah, and that's why I say, if you sell it internally as, hey, this is going to generate lots of advocates, it's a tough sell.
Yeah, yeah. Advocates leave 5-star reviews. 5-star reviews don't make advocates.
Right.
Yeah.
We have a question about what's called attribution, or measuring the value of reviews and all that. Before we dive into that, I know that we're close to the end of the hour. So first of all, thank you so much, Victoria and Erwin, for sharing all your knowledge, and thank you for everybody that attended. We'll keep on going with the questions, number one. So if people want to stay over, that's fine. At least 5 minutes or so. Number two, we're going to take all the questions and answers. We're going to put them on a page, and we're going to share that with everybody, a Q&A of frequently asked questions of all these questions together. So we'll any questions that you have, we'll add that later on. But I think one of the last questions I want to touch about is the measurement, because I think that's important. Colleen, Andrew, and Oran touched it in different ways. How do you measure the effectiveness of the program? How do you measure the conversion to sales? And how do you measure the influence on sales? So I at least will touch that a bit, and then of course Erwin and Victoria can answer as well. But I mean, for what we've seen is that basically, you can take, like Erwin mentioned, take little snippets of mentions in reviews, create that as content that sales can use in sales cycles while people are waiting for the reference call. Measure the fact that they used it, right? And there's different ways to measure if sales did or didn't. With marketing automation, you can measure if sales did or didn't use it, if prospect did or didn't visit a review page. You can create a landing page with all your reviews. So the idea is to take review content, restructure it in a way that sales can use it in sales processes, with landing pages, inside emails, little snippets, PDFs, and then measure the fact that they've used it and kind of say, look, all these deals use reviews and all these deals closed at $10 million. We helped influence $10 million, for example. Getting, in other ways, tracking how many people came with marketing automation from the review side and trying to see if they converted into a lead form. It's more fluffy, but that's what marketing automation does. They actually know the source of people came from LinkedIn, or the source of people came is from G2, and did they or did they not convert into lead? Other thoughts on that, Erwin and Victoria?
That's a great strategy. Yeah,
I'm not there yet.
That's a great strategy. Multi-touch attribution is definitely, not above my level. I found the most value in sending out a post-sale survey to our new customers and asking them which of the resources, from a pick list did they use in making the decision, and then just rack stanking those against the value of the opportunities.
Definitely, that's another way to measure for sure. So I think we're at the end of the hour. Do you want to take another question?
Sure, I'm fine.
There was a sophisticated question by Chuck. G2 rating methodology is majorly impacted by review rating, but also by online presence. Do you have any idea how they measure the online presence? I actually don't know.
I know it's multiple variables, and I know it's well documented on the G2 Crowd website, Chuck. I used to know it by heart. It has something to do with market presence. The number of social media followers is another variable. Go to G2 Crowd's website for more information.
Yeah, if you just type, I did this yesterday. I didn't go through it too deep, but they have a page called G2/methodologies.
Yeah.
So if you just put that into Google, that'll come up in a second.
Yep.
Right. And maybe one last one. Tiffany was asking, I see a lot of you are using CSMs as a source for reviews. So she'd love to hear more about strategies. She gave them spiffs, and she got crickets. So she's kind of asking if there's any other ideas.
Yeah, I think this is where I led off the presentation talking about, to me, this is a top-down effort.
Yes.
And basically, the CEO or the head of sales or whoever, or the VP of customer success has to go and tell them, look, this is something you've got to do. And we actually published the results of who had the most reviews, who had the least, and who had zero. And we sent it to the managers. We said, if you're okay with this, we're okay with it. But just want you to know, here are the rock stars, and here are the people that haven't done it, even though they've if they've, we got 10 or 15, names for them. And that's what managers are for. So leverage the managers.
Yep, absolutely. I think that visibility and the accountability, those two things go hand in hand. And a strategy we've shifted to with the customer success team is at the end of every single check-in call with their clients on a monthly or quarterly basis, they have to ask two questions. First, if that customer was going to sign the contract today, would they renew? And B, would they leave us a review on the website of our choice?
Cool. I think with that, we will end. First of all, thank you so much, everybody staff here, Erwin and Victoria. It was great. Thank you for all the content. Thank you for the people who stayed with us. This was recorded. We'll send it. We'll send the Q&A as well. Any last words? If not, amazing. And I think a lot of people learned a lot of stuff.